craftsman or artist? Sometimes it's hard to tell. In our next story, we'll meet a man who creates musical instruments that are as beautiful to the eye as they are to the ear. You can decide for yourself whether Randy Wood brings craft to his art or art to his craft.
That should be a little easier to play. We're an orphanage for homeless musicians, or my wife thinks so anyway. Almost a 30-second. We have a lot of the musicians get together out here and jam with each other. Yeah, good seeing you again, Ed. It's a meeting place for people. Of course, we have the retail store. Then we have the concert hall. But it seems like everywhere, we go somewhere, it winds up being kind of a community center of sorts. We take in strays and all kinds of stuff.
This hive of musical activity can be found next to a 4-lane road in tiny Bloomingdale, Georgia. And the magnet who draws musicians from near and far is Randy Wood.
How you doing?
How you been? Good to see you.
His name is unknown to most people, but mention him to anyone who plays a guitar or mandolin and their eyes light up.
I still love this. I'm enjoying it to death. Randy is the best there is. Something you have to live up to every day for everybody, and he does it every day for everybody.
He plays himself, he's been around musicians so long and everything, and I think all that contributes to how great his instruments are. For me, I'll make it worth your time. Today, thousands of musicians play and cherish instruments handcrafted by Randy Wood, and many more rely on him to keep their instruments in perfect shape.
We can certainly scallop this one out if that's what, if you want to do that.
But Wood's path to the workshop in Bloomingdale took several twists and turns. He grew up in rural Georgia near Douglas and Brunswick and inherited a love of woodworking from his father.
I can't remember when I didn't have a pocket knife or, a hammer and a saw or something. So I've always fooled with wood. Probably one of the worst whippings I ever got was losing my dad's pocket knife when I was, 4 or 5 years old. But it's just something that I've always done.
Wood also inherited a love of music.
We sang as a family. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and we used to sing growing up as a family, mostly gospel music. Back before we got electricity, we would listen to the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night. But I've always enjoyed music and basically taught myself to play while I was in the Army.
The Army for Wood meant Hawaii and plenty of time on his hands.
The type of work that I did was not real strenuous, so a lot of times I'd take a guitar to work with me and sit there and listen to the radio and try to play like they did.
After the Army, Wood moved to Atlanta, falling back on drafting classes he had taken in high school. But he never gave up his music, jamming regularly with his friend Tut Taylor.
Tut kept asking me if I would move to Milledgeville. And I wasn't really all that interested in moving to Milledgeville until he mentioned that he had a wood shop. And that had always been my dream to have access to a wood shop.
In Milledgeville, Wood took a day job at the asylum and honed his woodworking skills at night. There, he taught himself to make mandolins.
All the stuff that I do basically is self-taught. Because back when I was learning it, there were no books that you could learn out of, and there were no other people doing it that you could find to learn from.
Opportunity knocked again when a friend asked Wood to move to Muscle Shoals, Alabama to help in his instrument repair shop. To be sure of a steady income, Wood also lined up a drafting job.
By the time the drafting job became available, we were like 3 or 4 months behind in repair work, so I never did go to the drafting job. And I've been working on instruments ever since. And fortunately hadn't caught up.
But Wood's wandering days were far from over. The mega center of country music needed a good instrument shop, so Wood and Tut Taylor headed for Nashville.
We were on 4th Avenue, and our store basically backed up to the back of the old Ryman Auditorium. And at that time, Johnny Cash was doing the Johnny Cash show. They started rehearsals on Monday morning and taped on Thursday night, I think. Every week they had different stars, but the stars, they didn't have anything to do most of the time, so they'd come over and hang out in our shop.
During his years in Nashville, Wood repaired and improved instruments for everyone from Elvis to Eric Clapton. But Nashville changed and home called. In the late 1970s, Wood moved back to Georgia.
Nowadays, there's a repairman, seems like on every street corner. They're almost like gas stations. But you still have your clientele. I've got people that have followed me, since Milledgeville. He's a good mandolin player. It's been a real good ride so far. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on the file. You want to be firm. Yeah. I enjoy doing repair work because it gives you something different to do every day. But you also get to see and explore in nice old instruments that were made, 100 years ago or whatever. You see such interesting things.
But it's Wood's own handcrafted instruments that really display the depth and breadth of his skills.
I do metal engraving, I do pearl engraving. Of course, we do all types of finish work on instruments. I do wood carving, all kinds of pearl inlay work. I don't really consider myself an artist as such, and I'm just a woodworker that happens to build instruments.
I had one of his mandolins for a long time, and that's the one I really hated to see go.
I guess it was around 1990, is the first time I got my hands on one. And I went down there and seen it and fell in love with it. I played it for many years, and it was used on a lot of really good recordings.
I never dreamed I'd have a custom guitar, and I think we just discussed it, talked about it a little one day, and the idea just, it took on a life of its own. I can't tell him what I would like done. He knows what I should have done. This is a metal string guitar with a classical guitar setup. My big cradle of my hand needs that larger neck. He knew I had matriculated into geezerhood, so my hands would go to sleep reaching over the bigger guitars. So he made this one less thick, put this wonderful little piece of Brazilian rosewood here with a curve to keep it from cutting my circulation off. It's being kind to the elderly, I think.
Most of the time they just say, build build whatever you want to build. That's some beautiful wood. I enjoy looking at wood, and depending on the mood that you're in, a lot of times we'll pick out wood that you see something of the person in. I do a lot of fairly fancy inlay work, I guess, but to me, in a lot of cases, the plainer the instrument, the more beautiful it is.
Wood can create any sort of fretted instrument, but he has two favorites.
With the jazz guitars, the mandolins, you actually carve the tops and the backs of those, and you get the sound from how you graduate or how that leave the thickness on the tops and the backs. So it's, I think, a lot more work and a lot more labor intensive, but you get a lot more satisfaction out of it. You'll almost be ready to glue a top on.
High-end custom instrument with inlay and other decoration takes up to 3 months to make and can cost $15,000 or more. Some are so precious to their owners that they're rarely played.
You build an instrument because you want it to be played. Instruments actually deteriorate if they're not being played. And so many people will get a nice custom instrument made, and then they're afraid something's going to happen to it, so they stick it in a closet or put it in a bank vault, and it never gets played.
Wood estimates that close to 3,000 of his instruments are making music around the world, including more than 1,000 mandolins. but he is still modest about his skills.
I don't think you ever perfect the art. I think you're always learning. Every day I learn something new. I'm a firm believer that if you get up one day and you haven't learned anything that day, then you need to start looking for something else to do.
Craftsmen are okay. He passed that years ago. He was a craftsman when he started this. And now he's an artisan. And you just have to hunker down and learn to believe it.
Yeah, that's about right.